Hello everyone, next chapter is payment of tax. We would be discussing what payment of tax. Okay, so here there are three kinds of ledger. You remember electronic cash ledger, electronic credit ledger and electronic liability ledger. By what electronic liability ledger is debited? You remember any amount payable towards tax, interest, fees or the tax which is payable due to mismatch, any amount payable towards output tax is debited in electronic liability register. So for example, the amount payable towards output tax comes to 10,000 rupees. So 10,000 will be debited to electronic liability register. Now you remember electronic credit ledger. What was electronic credit ledger? What is credited in electronic credit ledger? The amount which is credited in electronic credit ledger is what? The input tax credit, which is self-assessed. Whatever purchases you have made, on which whatever taxes you have paid, you must have taken input tax credit of the same. The same will be credited in your electronic credit ledger. The same is credited to your electronic credit ledger. That is the input tax credit as self-assessed in the return in the form of IGST, CGST, SGST, UTGST. It would be credited to electronic credit ledger. It will be credited to electronic credit ledger. Okay. So for example, on purchases you have paid 6,000 rupees as GST, so it will be credited to your electronic credit ledger. You have taken that ITC in your GSTR 3B. From that it will come in electronic credit ledger. Then what is electronic cash ledger? It's like your bank account only. Okay, so in this, the any amount that you will deposit is this credited in this account. Okay, so for example, your liability is 10,000, you already have input tax rate of 6,000, so how much amount you will deposit? 4,000. So you have deposited 4,000. When you will deposit it in the electronic cash ledger, it will be credited to your electronic cash ledger. It will be credited to your electronic cash ledger. Now electronic, now you will discharge the liability. So your electronic credit ledger will be debited and electronic liability register will be credited. The amount which you'll use from electronic credit ledger and the amount which you'll use from electronic cash ledger will be debited and electronic liability register will be credited. So here 10,000, 10,000. So this register will become nil, electronic liability register will become nil, and then you can file the return. Okay. So now if you have deposited excess amount in electronic cash ledger, what will happen? Then it will carry over. So these three ledgers. Also the TDS TCS claim which we have discussed, it will be credited to your electronic cash ledger. Next is electronic credit ledger. Electronic credit ledger. So the amount available in electronic credit ledger may be used for making any payment towards output tax. So how you will use this? You will use the amount which is available in electronic credit ledger. How you will use this amount? You will use it only for the payment of output tax. It cannot be used for the payment of interest, penalty, fees or any other amount. The amount in electronic credit ledger. But the amount in electronic cash ledger, it could be used for anything, not a problem. Amount available in electronic credit ledger can be used only for the payment of output tax. Remember it very well. Now utilization of ITC, you remember we have done this. What do you mean by, what is this utilization of ITC? So the input tax credit of IGST will be used first for IGST, then for CGST, SGST, any order, any proportion. Then your ITC of IGST is completely exhausted. When your ITC of IGST is completely exhausted, that means your IGST has become zero. When your IGST has become zero, then after that you will use CGST. CGST will be used first for CGST, then for IGST, and SGST will be used first for SGST, then for IGST, okay. ITC on account of what happened? One second. ITC on account of SGST, UTGST should be used towards payment of IGST only after ITC of CGST has been fully utilized. When you have totally fully used CGST, when CGST has become zero, then only SGST will be used for IGST. And C cannot be used for S and S cannot be used for C. C cannot be used for S and S cannot be used for C. This is the basic rule, okay. So this is very important. This is manner of utilization of what? manner of utilization of electronic credit ledger, not cash ledger, okay? Electronic cash credit ledger. Whatever is the amount available in electronic credit ledger has to be utilized in this sequence only. What IGST will be used first for IGST, then for SGST, CGST, any order, any proportion. When IGST will become 0, then CGST will be used first for CGST, then for IGST. Similarly, SGST will be used first for SGST, then for IGST, and C cannot be used for S and S cannot be used for C. And ITC on account of SGST should be used towards payment of IGST only after CGST has been used fully. So when CGST will become 0, then only you will use SGST for IGST. Okay. Next is electronic cash ledger. Electronic cash ledger. The amount available in electronic cash ledger can be used for making payment towards tax, interest, penalty, fees or any other amount payable under the provisions of this act. So whatever is the amount available in electronic cash ledger, whatever is the amount available in electronic cash ledger, you can use it for making payment of tax, interest, penalty, late fees or any other amount, okay? So any amount you can use the amount available in electronic cash ledger. Now what are the major heads, what are the minor heads? The major heads are IGST, CGST, SGST, UTGST and says the minor heads are tax, interest, penalty, fees or any other amount. So the major heads are these: IGST, CGST, SGST, UTGST and cess, and the minor heads are tax, interest, penalty, fees or any other amount. Now whatever is the amount kept in any of the minor head of a major head, it could be used for that head only. For example, if the amount is kept in 2000 in minor head tax of major head IGST, so then this amount 2000 can be used for making payment of tax of IGST only. Now if you want to use, if you for example, if there is a penalty of 100 rupees under CGST, then you have to deposit 100 rupees under CGST penalty and then only you can use it. If you want to make payment of 200 of fees of CGST, you have to deposit that amount of 200 of fees under CGST. But now if there is an amount 1000 rupees which is ideal, kept ideal in SGST tax, and if you want to transfer it, can you transfer it to the penalty of CGST? Yes. Can you transfer it to fees of CGST? Yes. Can you transfer it to the tax of IGST? Yes. Anywhere if you want, you can transfer it, then only you can use it. If you want to use 100 for the payment of the penalty, then first you have to either deposit or you have to transfer it from some other head, then only you can use it. Okay. So whatever is the amount which is lying unutilized, so the facility has been provided to registered person to transfer an amount from one major minor head to another major minor head in the electronic cash ledger. So registered person, what is the facility? Registered person can transfer the amount, from one minor major head to another minor major head in the electronic cash ledger. So registered person can do what? He can transfer the amount. From one minor major head to another minor major head in the electronic cash ledger. Why this facility of transfer has been provided? For example, there is an erroneous deposit under any minor head of a major head to another minor head of the same category. Like for example, I have deposited erroneously 200 rupees under interest of IGST. I have deposited 200 rupees. So what I can do? So if I have deposited 200 under interest wrongly of IGST, then if I want to transfer it to CGST tax 200 rupees, yes, I can do, because I have erroneously deposited. Or second, transfer of any amount already lying unutilized under any of the minor head. For example, there is 1000 rupees kept under tax. Under what? Under the minor head of a major head cess. So this amount is kept unutilized. So I want to transfer it to, yes, I can transfer it. So yeah, due to erroneous deposit or unutilized amount, I can definitely transfer it. Then only I can use it. Okay. What are the modes of payment? How can I make the payment? I can make the payment online through internet banking, credit debit card, NEFT, RTGS, all these can be done. But over the counter, if I want to pay, the limit is 10,000 per challan per tax period. Now, there are few liabilities which are to be discharged only through cash, only through cash. What are those things which are to be discharged only through cash? The TDS TCS, the TDS TCS always obviously through cash. RCM payment if you want to make, always through cash. Composition levy, if you're a person, you have to always make a payment through cash because you are not entitled for the ITC. Interest, penalty, fees or any other amount, for all these the electronic cash ledger is utilized. Electronic cash ledger is utilized. Now, what is the order of discharge of the liability of a taxable person? There is a order, fixed order of discharge of the liability, like all dues relating to previous tax period you have to pay first, then all dues relating to current tax period you will pay, and then any other demand under section 73, 74 you have to pay. So this is the order of discharge. Sometime a practical question can come. So first the dues related to previous tax period, then the dues related to current tax period, then all dues including demand under section 73, 74 you need to pay. Now, a registered person, the common portal, he can transfer this, we have already discussed. Interest, what is the rate of interest? 18%. If even if you pays the amount late, or if you have wrongly utilized and availed the ITC, then also the rate of interest is 18%, 18%. And in case of late payment of tax, when you have delayed the return also, in that case you have to discharge the liability on net tax liability, otherwise gross tax liability, gross tax liability. Okay. Now, rule 86B, not very important. We have up till now what we have discussed is very important. Okay, the question might come from that, you know, the practical questions, the implications of those points are there, which we have already discussed up till now. Now, rule number 86B. So the amount available in electronic credit ledger, the whatever is the amount which is available in your electronic credit ledger, a registered person can use it to discharge his output tax liability to 99% of such tax liability in case where the value of taxable supply other than exempt supply and zero rated supply in a month exceeded 50 lakh rupees. So whatever is the amount available in the electronic credit ledger, you can use it to discharge your output tax liability to 99%. You can use it in case where the value of taxable supply other than exempt supply and zero rated supply in a month exceeds 50 lakhs, provided your value of taxable supply exceeds 50 lakh. So your value of taxable supply in a month exceeds 50 lakh, then you can use your electronic credit ledger to the extent of 99% only. To the extent of 99% only. Okay. This rule overrides all the other rules. The restriction shall not apply in the following cases. So this rule will override all the other rules, and the restriction shall not apply in the following cases. What are the cases when the restriction is not applicable? So in this case, the restriction will not applicable where the proprietor, karta, MD or any of the two partners, whole-time directors, members and all these, as the case may be, have paid more than 1 lakh as income tax. What you have paid? More than 1 lakh as income tax in each of the last two financial year. In each of the last two financial year, you have paid more than 1 lakh as income tax. You have paid more than 1 lakh as income tax in last two financial year. Okay. So when the said person, proprietor, karta, MD or any of the two partners, whole-time directors, members of the committee and all have paid more than 1 lakh as income tax in each of the last two financial year. In each of the last two financial year, if you have paid more than 1 lakh as income tax, more than 1 lakh is income tax, in that case, this restriction will not apply. Where you are a registered person, you have received a refund of more than 1 lakh, in last year on account of what? Unutilized ITC in case of zero rated supply made without payment of tax and inverted duty structure. In these two cases, if you receive refund of unutilized ITC of more than 1 lakh in the last year, so in that case also the restriction of this will not applicable. That means you can use 100% of your electronic credit ledger in this case. And then when the registered person, he has discharged his liability towards output tax through electronic cash ledger for an amount which is in excess of 1% of the total liability applied cumulatively up to the said month in the current financial year. That means what? You are a registered person, you have discharged your liability of output tax through using electronic cash ledger. You are paying the liability using electronic cash ledger, which is in excess of 1% of total output liability up till now. Up till now, cumulatively applied, you have paid more than 1% through electronic cash ledger. Then also this restriction is not applicable. And where the registered person is a government department, PSU, local authority, statutory body. What? Where the registered person is a government department, PSU, local authority, statutory body. In this case also the restriction is not applicable. Restriction is not applicable. So the restriction will not be applicable in these four cases. The restriction is not applicable in these four cases. However, the commissioner or officer authorized by him in this behalf may remove the restriction after verification and such safeguard as he may deem fit. However, what officer, the commissioner or officer who is authorized in this behalf, he can remove the said restriction after verification. If he wants, he can remove the said restriction. So, generally, what is the restriction? If the taxable supply is more than 50 lakhs, then you can use your electronic credit ledger to the extent of 99% only. That means 1% you have to discharge by electronic cash ledger only. But this restriction is not applicable in the four cases where you have paid more than 1 lakh as income tax in last 2 financial year, or you have received refund of more than 1 lakh in case of unutilized ITC, of unutilized ITC in case of zero rated or inverted duty structure, or you have discharged cumulatively up till now you have discharged more than 1% by using electronic cash ledger, or where the registered person is a government department, PSU, local authority, statutory body. So in these four cases restriction will not apply. In these four cases restriction will not apply. Okay, now clarification regarding utilization of amount available in electronic credit ledger and electronic cash ledger for payment of tax and other liability. So now what is this? So it is clarified that any amount paid towards output tax, whether self-assessed in the return or payable as a consequence of proceeding instituted under the provision of GST law, can be made by utilization of the amount available in electronic credit ledger of the registered person. So here this we know very well, that any amount towards output tax, whether in the return or as a proceedings, whatever output tax, for output tax you can use electronic credit ledger as well. Okay, for output tax you can use electronic cash ledger as well as credit ledger. So the clarification is that you can, for output tax, whether the output tax is self assessed, that is you have assessed, or the officer has assessed, in both the cases output tax can be paid using electronic credit ledger of the person, using electronic credit ledger. That is not a problem. Whether amount available in electronic credit ledger can be used for making payment of any liability other than tax? No, it cannot be. This we have already discussed. Okay, so it cannot be used for making, this clarification has also come, it cannot be used for making payment other than output tax. Okay, it cannot be used for tax, interest, penalty, fees or any other amount. Whether the amount available in electronic cash ledger can be used for making payment of any liability? Yes, it can be used for making payment of any liability. You have to deposit that amount in that particular minor head of major head and then you can use it, or you have to transfer and then you can use it. Okay, next, what is the last date up to which rectification of error is allowed in statement furnished by ECO is extended up to 30th November of the financial year? So in next chapter definitely we are going to discuss this again. Next, clarification on charging of interest under 53 in case of wrong availment of IGST and reversal thereof. Now you have wrongly availed the ITC and after that you have reversed that also. After that you have reversed that also. So what is the clarification? We'll see. So the clarification addresses that the calculation of interest in case you have incorrect claiming in subsequent reversal of ITC. You have taken the IGST and then you have reversed it. You have taken the ITC and then you have reversed it. So the key consideration is whether interest calculation as per rule 88B should be based on the balance of IGST alone in the electronic credit ledger or on the total available credit. So the interest calculation will be on the basis of IGST alone or on the basis of IGST, CGST, SGST. How the interest calculation should be done? How the interest calculation should be done is the question. The conclusion is that interest calculation should take into account the total credit available in electronic credit ledger under IGST, CGST, SGST. So now the interest calculation will be based on what? Total credit available. So for example, you have wrongly taken 10,000 as IGST credit and then you have reversed it also. So what you have done? You have taken what? Wrongly availed IGST of 10,000 and then you have reversed it. Also 10,000. So for calculation of interest, because you have wrongly availed this credit, so in this what is to be taken? So the government said ki if you have wrongly availed and reversed the ITC, the total balance of IGST, CGST, SGST should be used. If the total ECL, for example, actually the total ECL is say 50,000 rupees during this entire period when you have wrongly availed 10,000 as IGST. So if the total ECL never drops below the amount wrongly claimed IGST during the entire period from wrongful claim to correction, there is no interest liability because you have wrongly availed it. But still never your balance drop below 10,000. It is always 50,000. Then there is no interest liability. Even if you have wrongly availed and then you have reversed it, then also there is no interest liability. When the total ECL balance, this 50,000 is total, that is of IGST, CGST, SGST, never drops below the amount claimed wrongly IGST. In the entire period from wrongful claim to correction, there is no interest liability. However, if at any point if the total ECL falls below the wrongly claimed IGST, but at any point if the total ECL falls below the wrongly claimed IGST credit amount, interest is charged to the extent of shortfall. Then in that case, interest is charged to the extent of what? Shortfall. To the extent of shortfall. Okay. So this is what. Next, whether the credit of compensation cess, what does they say? Are they saying credit of compensation cess shall be available? Whether the credit of compensation cess available in ECL shall be taken into account while considering the balance of ECL for the purpose of calculation of interest under 88B in respect of wrongly availed and utilized IGST, CGST, SGST credit. So, since ITC in respect of compensation cess can be used only towards payment of compensation cess, ITC, the input tax credit of compensation cess, you all know it can be used only for the payment of compensation cess. So the credit of compensation cess cannot be used for payment of CGST, SGST or IGST or reversal of credit. So the credit of compensation cess we don't use for credit, what? CGST, SGST, IGST, anything. So the credit of compensation cess available in ECL cannot be taken into account while calculating the balance of ECL for the purpose of calculation of interest in respect of wrongly availed and utilized IGST, CGST, SGST. So even if the balance of 5,000 is kept in the, for example, electronic credit ledger of cess, it should not be taken into account for the computation of interest. If you have wrongly availed and utilized IGST, CGST or SGST, the balance of cess is not to be used for the purpose of calculation of interest. Very low probability that on these two clarifications in exam the question can come. In exam the question will 100% come on what? On this. You have to remember electronic cash provisions, you have to remember, and the interest rate is 18%, that you have to remember. Okay. So here we will stop discussion of this chapter, beta. Thank you for now.